I'm standing outside Witney Cinema where a recent protest over the controversial film Jesus of Nazareth has just come into play. The film has had controversy all over the country, and this recent protest has caused many riots. I'm going to interview one of the protesters and find what's actually wrong.
I'll tell you what's wrong. It's a blatant attack against our Lord. It's blasphemy, I tell you. Shouldn't be allowed. It should be banned straight away.
Yes.
How can they put things like this on our screens?
Yeah. Have you actually seen the film before?
No.
Since the birth of cinema, there has been a tenuous relationship between filmmakers and religious groups. Despite a set of rules to abide by, there would always be someone who got upset. There have been bans, boycotts, angry letters, death threats and acts of violence. So why do allegedly pacifist groups resort to such tactics over a movie? And do they have a right to protest over a filmmaker's creative interpretation of their faith? Let's find out. Religious films have been made since the beginning, but while Americans witnessed the New Testament brought to life on the screen, the early film censors in Britain did not allow portrayals of Jesus Christ.
There was a feeling that to include a depiction of Christ on a film was irreverent, but also to the extent of being potentially offensive. If you look at films from the early part of last century, that Christ was being depicted in all those great sort of epic movies.
It wasn't until the 1970s that Hollywood began using religion to reflect cultural changes. But in 1979, the British cult comedy group Monty Python made their third feature film, Life of Brian. But it wasn't about Jesus, but rather religious zeal.
Some of it's a joke. It's not just looking. It's not looking to destroy. It's actually looking to make fun of some of the crazier things that religious people sometimes do.
This is the Messiah, the chosen one! No, he's not! An unbeliever! Persecute! Kill the heretic!
But this didn't stop campaigning against its release.
I saw the film and we took legal advice on it when it first came out. And the legal advice was that it would probably not constitute a blasphemous libel because right from the outset it was made perfectly clear that Brian was not Christ. But what I did take exception to was the notion that crucifixion is like some jolly boy's outing.
Always look on the bright side of life.
They sought legal opinion from a bunch of legal experts. This is interesting, the summing up of their decision. It does not, in our view, offensively abuse sacred objects or ridicule or vilify them, although it does treat in a humorous, not to say hilarious, manner of certain biblical stories and characters.
Crucifixion? Yes, good. Out of the door, line on the left, one cross each.
The Master healed me! I didn't touch him! I was blind, and now I can see!
He's not the Messiah! He's a very naughty boy! Now go away! I'm his mother, that's who!
Here are the files for Life of Brian and Last Temptation of Christ. They're full of all sorts of interesting bits and pieces, lots of press cuttings, letters to the board. Here's just one letter. I speak for the whole of the Elim Pentecostal Church in the United Kingdom when I say that we're disturbed that such a film is being shown at all. He goes on to say how much he appreciates the difficulty of the work that we do. We do not protest simply for the sake of having something to protest about. We do, however, have a great concern for our nation and the almost frightening lowering of standards in so many moral issues. It is therefore a tragedy that the founder of the Christian faith who has brought worthwhile standards to life and living should be held up to such ridicule.
If Life of Brian was the film that pushed the church's tolerance of the media to the limit, then director Martin Scorsese was the one that broke that limit. In 1988, he directed his own film about Jesus, but it wasn't based on the Bible, but on a work of fiction. The Last Temptation of Christ by Nikos Kazantzakis was blacklisted by the Vatican.
It goes into great detail about his experience as a human being put in this incredible position of enforced deity.
At the announcement of the film, protesters thought that it would portray Jesus as one who resisted his calling to be the Messiah and engaging in sexual activity.
You're dealing with something that people hold very dearly. Their religious beliefs are something that people feel are under attack all the time.
Who are you?
I'm the angel who guards you.
I haven't seen the whole film, but I understand that the most controversial part is when Jesus is on the cross, and I believe he fantasizes having sex with Mary Magdalene, which I can understand that, you know, that sounds offensive to Christians because the Bible tells us that it doesn't give us any evidence for that at all. But as you say, it was based on a novel.
Well, according to Scripture, our Lord was tempted after 40 days in the wilderness, but he didn't succumb to the temptation. In Scorsese's film, he did.
The trickiest scene is the scene where Christ is sexually tempted. That whole idea, that whole concept in itself, for some people, was a bridge too far. But that isn't to say all Christians felt like that. There are many, many other Christians that felt that this was fine. This was humanising Christ.
Somebody pointed out that Jesus was human as well as God, Christians believe. So he was tempted.
But this is not the only film based on a controversial novel about Jesus having a family with Mary Magdalene. The Da Vinci Code was seen by some Christians as an attack on their beliefs and a phenomenon that would mislead people.
Until that moment in history, Jesus was viewed by many of his followers as a mighty prophet, as a great and powerful man, but a man, nevertheless, a mortal man.
Not the Son of God?
They needn't have worried.
I think it left it up in the air and said, this is a possibility, it may not be the fact, whereas the book sort of presents it was.
History shows us Jesus was an extraordinary man, a human inspiration. That's it.
I think a lot of people who probably don't know much about Jesus, have seen the film and have thought, well, that's really interesting, and they wanted to explore more.
In more recent years, the church has learned to be more engaging with film, and this has led to the promotion of one of the most controversial religious films of all time. It proved an absolute hit with the Christian community, but another faith, the Jewish community, has protested it as anti-Semitic. So is it right that the church is promoting a film that another faith finds offensive?
I think that The Passion of the Christ was a very violent film. The scourging scenes, I thought, were excessive. I think the churches promoted it because they felt that it was a true account of the passion and death of Christ. Now, when it came to the Jewish community feeling affronted, according to the gospel account, the Jews handed him over to Pilate for crucifixion.
I know a colleague of mine went to see it with a Jewish friend who was a rabbi, and I don't think they felt, either of them, that this was really an anti-Semitic film.
Not all Christians are quick to object to a new controversial film. I myself think that these films can provide a discussion opportunity, and this is what Real Issues does.
Real Issues is a service that we provide to groups who want to meet together and discuss film. So it's a little bit like book groups. Probably even more people watch films than read books. But we wanted to keep faith as part of the discussion. So they'll be reacting sort of to the story and the characters, but they'll also be asked to think about the issues behind it. What we provide is a website, and there's a new discussion of a film every month.
Looking at these films, it's interesting to see how filmmakers have set out to express their beliefs and ideas, only to be accused of heresy. But in this day and age, Christianity is getting more media aware despite different attitudes from condemnation to engagement. And if there's anything these films have taught me, it's that
You've got to think for yourselves. You're all individuals.
And
The only thing that matters is what you believe.
so if the church and filmmakers are going to get along, let's remember what the man said: love your neighbour as yourself.
Hey. What's he like?
God. Lonely, but funny. It's got a great sense of humour. Take sex, for example. There's nothing funnier than the ridiculous faces you people make mid-coitus.
Sex is a joke in heaven.
The way I understand it is mostly a joke down here, too. I'll see you.